Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Market Trade Group, and it is Tuesday, August 24th. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through here is for information purposes only. You can read the risk disclaimer right here. If the video is a little bit blurry, it is just because YouTube takes a while to render the high definition version of the video, so just give it a little bit more time. Theme of the day. I have this spelled wrong, but it is the third strong breath day in a row. And now I've even messed it up even more. Let me make sure my cap locks are off. There we go. Third strong breath day in a row. Let's go ahead and look at that market breath again. You can see it on the bottom left of your screen. It's an indicator that we use called the web breath indicator. Just looks at exchange participation with volume. So it's been pretty close to the same for like the last 3 days. If we want to look at the raw numbers, we could do that here. Let's just go through these stats really quickly. Dow Jones had, interesting. The outperformance really wasn't here. And again, if you look at the S&P, even though that there was the stronger participation, S&P was only up almost 0.2 of a percentage point. The Qs were up 0.3. Really, where you're getting that strong breath from is the small caps. IWM was up 1%. How much were the micro caps, which led yesterday to? They were up just about 1% as well. And then, of course, some other things like the ADRs were very strong today. The Chinese Internet ETF was up 11% today. Wow, is that a monster bounce or what? Just to carry through with these numbers here. S&P, there was nice advancers versus decliners here. 312 versus 192, and then of course 1875 versus 1000. Again, big numbers there, advancing versus declining issues. So a lot of things to talk about this video. We'll go through quick. There's just a lot of different things that happened. That of course. It's very broad when you say great participation, but when you look under the hood, there was definitely some interesting things going on here. So the Chinese internet names, big bounce. One of the things that I talked about pre-market was that yesterday there was the largest one-day inflow ever into the Chinese Internet ETF, over $500 million, right? And here's what this looks like. Bloomberg does provide this data if you know how to kind of put it on your screen appropriately. There's a field that you have to bring in. You got to manipulate the data a little bit. But there it is, just for visualization purposes. We talked about this before, how there was a lot of inflows in July. They just didn't translate into the price action. Why didn't the inflows translate into the price action? Because there was just more motivated sellers in the individual names. Remember how an ETF works, by the way, which I don't want to go too far in the weeds to this because there's a lot of other things to talk about. But in any ETF, right, it's not just the inflows that are going into and out of the ETF, right? I put out the data every day for the biggest fund flows for on the ETF side. But as we know, the most stock trading that happens is in individual names. So if there are multiple parties, like Kathy Wood, who was selling her holdings in the Chinese internet names over the last few weeks, right? That's just one fund. We know that there's been a lot of funds that have been selling their individual ADR exposure, things like BABA, JD, PDD, the whole lot of them, right? There's been heavy selling pressure in all those names. So just because the ETF saw inflows, that's not the whole picture, right? And as always, when we're reading option activity and flows and block trades, you have to kind of understand that these are just pieces of the puzzle, right? They're in a framework of many other trades going on. Now, sometimes one block trade or some option trade can kind of dominate, or repeat activity can dominate, but you do still have to put the piece of the puzzle together. That is why that we didn't see the Chinese internet names, even though that there was a ton of inflows in July. That is why we did not see it rebound, because on the other side of that, the basket of what it tracks, there was a lot of sellers in the individual names. Now, this by chance did it. This heavy volume. And I think people really started to take a look. Going back to Kathy Woods, she bought like $170,000, 100 and I don't know. I forget what the number was. 180,000 shares of JD, which, by the way, is peanuts, right? It's like $10 million. It's nothing. So there was a lot of other. This inflow, like I said, that one order from ARK was $10 million. This was over $500 million. So much bigger scale. This was yesterday, and of course, the overnight market really moved, and there was some follow through move. So one of the things that I'll remind you, because I don't buy a lot of things that are in downtrends, there can still be some very wicked counter trend moves. I could tell you back from when I used to trade institutionally, back in 2007 to 2009, when the market was going down, there was some huge, counter trend rallies. That it felt like while the trend was down, it felt like, wow, these were huge one-day events that we would have, even though the market was going down in 2000, and 2007 and 2008, mainly 2008. So just keep that in mind. We've also talked about this before, that this was due for a big bounce, right? This was pretty oversold, so you got it. So what I would do at this point, right, because the question always is, a name in a downtrend, is it going to do more than just bounce? Is it going to actually change direction? Or is that basically all you're going to get out of it, or possibly a little bit of a further bounce? What I would watch is this level right here in the Chinese Internet ETF, 49.70. Also with BABA, one thing to note yesterday with this hammer bar was the volume with this thing. But that wasn't the biggest move. This was only up 6.6%. What was really impressive was this move in this PDD that reported earnings. This thing was up 22%. And if you're looking for a level for this, look at the volume in this thing today on earnings. A lot of option positioning into this thing, but we've seen that before in this name, and it hasn't worked. Sometimes it works. Sometimes the speculative call buying works. Sometimes it doesn't, because we certainly have seen call buying in this thing, weeks and months ago, and it didn't work. Just being completely upfront with you about that. But look at where it is on the 1 hour chart. I think that we could see this 104.55 taken out. I do think this name can rally up to there. All right. Now again, may not get there in a straight line, may back and fill a little bit. If it happens to back and fill into 96, and you're looking for some speculative action in a Chinese internet name, that's where I would take a look. JD also had a monster day too, up 14%. Speaking of these VPOCs, took a couple of them out. There's another one up here at 76 on the 1 hour chart. Again, Virgin point of controls, they are areas of high volume that price is not returned to, right? So they act often as overhead supply, right? Meaning there could be some profit taking around those levels. Also notice 76.80 is the top of value for the month. But impressive, very impressive, up 14%. That's just a huge move. So that was one of the stories for the day. I think that was definitely one of the things to talk about. Also just more outperformance from the energy stocks. That's the second day, right? We saw crude. If we want to look at this chart briefly, I didn't do any trading in this. We did see a nice Devon Energy call buyer out in December. It'll be interesting to see what this thing. Again, this thing has to get through some overhead stuff. It's still in value for the month, 29.22, but it was a block of like 10,000 calls that went up in December. So it's a name. At least now I have a name to watch. I did not take the trade myself, but it's a name to watch. And I was going to mention the crude chart, which Devon Energy may be also tied to nat gas, but just crazy when you look at these 2 days, right? Move all the way from like 62 to 66, a decent move for crude. We're right at resistance for the week. So look at how large that value area is. So we basically retraced the move, most of the move from, basically the move from last week. So big move down, big move back up. Now, again, a lot of this. So why did some of these things happen? Why did crude move down last week? Why did it move back up? Well, there was a little bit more of a risk-off tone last week, and then we're hearing some things this week about the Delta variant. Right, we're hearing that it may have peaked out in some states, right? And we've kind of seen this move happen before. The way that they count the cases, right? We see big move up, and then we see plateauing or peaking, and it kind of washes through a little bit. So hopefully that's what the case is there. And that also led to a whole bunch of reopening plays that we saw hitting the tape. We saw a lot of calls in the the beaten up areas, the airlines. We'll talk about Airbnb in just a minute. That was my trade of the day. So I guess we can kind of move to that group, considering we're talking about this. But let's go to the Airbnb chart. So again, this is one of those things where I have a lot of alerts placed on areas, right? And that's what the MarketWebs value areas help me do. Once I start to see a move out of congestion, right, and we know when a name is inside value, right, so which is inside these two white lines, it's in a range, right? It's in a range of previous volume, right? And you could see the market profile from the previous month. So what I look for is breaking out of these ranges, right? And you could tell right here you had a break out of the range and you had a monster day. So it's not what always happens, but it's what can happen once you're breaking out of a range. Also, one thing to note, because I tried trading this name back in June, and it just never got out of this this 153 to like 155 range. What I noticed back then is that there was a seller who kept on every time this name was trying to rally out of the range, it just kept getting hit. So I stood in this trade for about like a week or so, and I just said, "I listen. Every time the price action gets up here, this name gets hit over the head." So I said, I don't know when the seller is going to be done in this name. I will revisit it, right? And that's basically I set my alert, right around this level, and I did get involved in the name today. Okay, so here's the trade blotter for the day. What time was this? Yeah, right about 15 minutes after the open. So yeah, I didn't get this right around 151 or 152 because I just had my alert set a little bit higher because I had so many issues the last time I traded this within that 152 to 154 range. So I put the alert a little bit higher for confirmation purposes, but this really worked well. And then, of course, I'm looking for levels on the shorter term charts. If I don't see any resistance there, I check to see where there's a virgin point of control. And my target was 162.60. Now, we got close enough to it at the end of the day, so I did take another target, and I should be down here. So one, excuse me, 161.5. And again, this is just a target. I've got some, I've got some of this trade left on. But when I get a move like this, this fast, I take advantage of it. And I'll go through some more charts here. I forgot to go over the S&P chart. I just kind of wanted to give my view of what's happening here. We still have many events to get through for the rest of the week. So, I think this is a really nice gift so far that we've gotten, since we had this hammer bar on Thursday. We're in this nice little swing up here. We do have to be aware of when we do have some more events. Powell speaks on Friday morning for the Jackson Hole teleconference, which it is now. But in any event, I think I said this in yesterday's video, but I'll say it again. Everybody got all hyped up on what the Fed minutes came out with last week, which was not the Fed speaking. That was what the Fed said over a month ago at this point. So I really thought it was an overreaction to language from a month ago, right? There's a lot that's changed then. So we'll be getting some fresh information out on Friday. So that could cause this market to kind of jostle around a bit. Now, I'm not making any predictions. My job, once we kind of have a change in change and move, right, where the price really changes for us and when there's good participation, my job is to try to capture as much of it as I can, right, and to have some trades on to profit from it. And then realize when it changes, right? Not so much anticipate when it's going to change, but realize when it actually does change. And of course, being responsible along the way, taking some trades off, taking some targets in trades, but not. I don't want to anticipate. Right? There's someone who I was having a conversation with this yesterday about someone who puts out videos, and they're always trying to anticipate when the market is going to turn. We don't really know when this. I mean, this looks a little bit tired in here, but we don't know until we actually know, right? And if you follow trend trading, one of the things that is taught in trend trading is not to try to guess when the end of a trade is going to trend is going to happen. Your job as a trader, or specifically my job as a trend trader, is to try to make as much money when there is a trend. When there's not a trend, to not be as exposed, right? And on the turns, it's going to hurt a little bit, right? Right, but it's kind of like a paper cut, right? But people always are so worried, and newer traders hate to lose any money, right? There's a fear that they might give back a whole bunch of money. If you're watching the market closely, like we are on a day-to-day basis, right, you might have a down day a little bit when the market does turn and go the other way. And again, let me go back to what I just said. As long as you're being somewhat responsible, taking some trades off, taking profits, right, and adding a little bit to your cash balance, then when the market does turn and go and reverses and goes the other way, I always take off a couple trades, but I've already locked in gains, right? So it's going to hurt on those last couple trades that I've got on, but overall, that's how it works, right? We look to make a lot of money when this happens, and then when the market starts to revert back, we look to lose a little bit money on the move. Because this could also go all the way up to 45.14, right? That's the next extension. So while so many, I think, waste time with trying to spot exactly where this market is going to turn, I would rather just continue to focus on what I'm seeing in terms of individual names, where I'm seeing setups, if they look like they're good setups, or if I can't, one hint that I often will find is that if I'm not finding any new setups, or if it's really difficult to find setups, that's usually where the market may be getting a little bit exhausted to the upside. Right, so that helps, but it's just the cycle of how these things play out. So you could try to guess. Oh, is it up 2%? Is it up 3%? Is it up 5%? No one knows. All right, Nasdaq. Also, there's a bit of consolidation around this. Speaking of extensions away from the value area for the week, lot of consolidation around this extension, right around 15,363, right? And again, that's the first one. But notice, just because it's resting here over the past few hours of the day, there's no sell signal, right? There's no break of this moving average. There's no break of this moving average, right? You could look at this on the daily chart too. It looks fine to me. Are we getting extended in Nasdaq? Sure, we're getting, after 4 to 8, 1, 2, 3, 4 green bars. Yeah, we're getting extended. Right. So again, my opinion: be responsible. Take some profits. Take some trades off. Take some targets in existing trades. Just how it works. IWM. Let's look at this one really quickly. Right back into the middle of this value area. What I talked about in yesterday's video was that I didn't like how this weekly chart looked. However, if price keeps pushing here, it's going to kind of, this moving average crossover is going to be neutralized, right? Also, the more that we see positive breadth, that advanced decline line is getting stronger, right? So we're getting away from, that nasty advanced decline line that we've been talking about over the last couple weeks, the more that we see this participation. All right, just to go over a few other names, let's talk about the other story that was of the day, which this stuff is to me, I understand some people really like when these stocks move. It's a distraction for me, right? The tape just gets peppered with calls, right? And then you can't see all the other signals, right? If you're following option activity, right? So I do tend to watch option activity during the cash session, and when I see something like 85,000 weekly calls go up, I mean, look. if you don't put here, why don't I bring this up for you? So I say some bad things on things that probably get people angry on Twitter, but I just, it really is a distraction to me when all I see is the same ticker because people are looking for a short squeeze to happen in this. But take a look at the volume, right, in some of these strikes, and you probably have to open this up a little bit more. Let me bring out 50 strikes. Let's try that one more time. Okay, here we go. All right, so where did this thing finish? 44. I mean, look at this, 117,000, right? And most of what's happening is these are little pieces, right? Because someone has told somebody in message rooms that keep jamming small orders into the market makers because it jams up the order flow, right? So this is what you have. 97,000 of these, 85,000 of these. Look, just the volume is crazy, right? With the intent to try to disrupt. Right. So again, I don't like the manipulation of markets. Obviously, someone is doing this in in collusion with another, right? And I understand the other side of the argument, right? When I hear this from retail traders when they say, "Oh, well, hedge funds do it," right? Two wrongs don't make a right. Like manipulating the market to make it go up or down, I'm not a fan of on either side. And all of this option flow to me is just a distraction, right? I get it. We all want names that we're in to go up, right? But you should be doing it in a fair way and not a disruptive way. And I just view that option flow. Some people don't. They gloss over this and they don't give their opinion. I just think this collusion with one another to try to manipulate the stock price, whether it doesn't matter who's doing it, a hedge fund, retail shop, whether it's the Speaker of the House who's buying calls, I just don't think that stuff is fair. Right? And people want a fair and orderly market. And I don't think communicating with others to say, hey, we're going to buy as many calls options as we can in 15 minutes so that we can jam the order books. I'm sorry. I have a problem with this stuff. Let's talk about the technicals with this stuff. Now, besides that, you may think, oh, he doesn't trade this stock. I actually gave this setup because I've been watching this stock because, believe it or not, it's been a good short opportunity because every time this thing has rallied, it's been making a lower high. But you have to watch for that pattern to flip. Today, what did it do? It flipped. So I said this earlier in the trading room today, and I said, hey, this thing's either going to it's at an interesting pivot area. Either it's going to start to rally again, or it's going to start to make another lower high and break down and start to fill through this value area. And then when I first saw the calls, the first hourly break, and I responded to somebody on Twitter. So I mentioned it to a trading room. I said, hey, this thing looks like it's going to go. And it sure did, from 38 to 45. So, if you caught it, and you weren't being part of the manipulation, congratulations to you. Listen, I'm all for making money in this market. Just have to do it in a fair and orderly way. Now, of course, this wasn't the only one to move. The whole lot of them moved. So let me, before I go to the other ones, take a look at where this thing stopped going. Despite all that call option, right? This thing went to the top of value, which I'll bring up on the second chart. But this is the version point of control that was taken out, and that's as far as it went. So for tomorrow, if you're interested in this name, and I don't know what's going to happen in the after hours market with this name, but I would definitely be watching this 45 level, right? Maybe call it 45.50, right? And that would be a level, if you like this name, that would be a level to trade against. Let's move over to GameStop, and we'll just talk about this one. Notice where that went to right into overhead supply. Right now, there's a lot of trapped longs in these names, right? So this version point of control was the biggest volume that occurred in this period, right? So there are some sellers in these names that are at higher levels. People have been trapped for months in these names. You don't think they're going to sell at this point after they've been stuck in these names for 2 months? I beg to differ if you don't have that opinion. So what I would say to you, if you like GameStop, watch to see if it can reclaim that 215 level, right? You want to see it get above the level where there was all this volume, right? And the same thing with AMC. Now, we did see call buying in like 10 other names, right? The usual suspects. All of those names that appear before. I'm not going to spend more time on this because I want to get through some other charts before the end of this video, which is already 24 minutes. I apologize. We talked about that one. We'll talk about Roblox, which is a name that, so same thing here. I decided not to take this one because I knew it was going to have to get through this area of high volume. So for now, it stopped there. But I think this thing has a chance to actually power through. So this one will be on my watch list tomorrow. Another one, which I just bought at the end of the day, is Bumble. Right. First, just barely closed to qualify for a buy signal on my chart. Watch what it does around this 54 level. For now, you could see that I started a position. All right. Another one that I was talking about on Twitter last night was DraftKings. I actually bought some of this pre-market. I had this on a week ago for an idea for a possible run into football season, and it canceled the buy signal. So here's where I went long. Once it fell back, I think I actually unwound it very close to the low, and then it spent some time building, and then I bought this thing pre-market. So again, look at I didn't miss much with this, right? And I'm looking for this thing to get to 58. There's also some overhead supply right up here around 57. So I will probably look to unwind this a couple dollars further up. Team, just to go through a couple of winners here. Team, big move the last couple days, right? You've heard me talk about this one in past videos. I believe I got out of this one today, right? Yep, out of Team. So again, talking about what trying to execute what I talked about earlier in the week, taking some profits, right? A few other names, PAGS, right? This is a name that saw a whole bunch of call activity yesterday. I'm looking for this thing to really get above here. If it does, if it manages to get a little bit higher where it was on earnings day, I will take off the calls and I will go into stock, right? I'll make that substitution. I also got out of this U trade. So again, taking profits. EVBG, right? Another software name, right? I'm going to try to stay in this one for a little bit because it's such a nice break, even on the value area too. Right? And there's nothing up here until 157, which is another $7 up. So I will try to stay in this software name. Just a few other names. Crowd, really nice. Had the recipient of two good things that happened. Number one, they're going into the queues, and number two, the Palo Alto earnings, which were very strong. Interesting, this thing could not break out of value, so it's going to have earnings. And I would say if you bought the dip down here, congratulations. I did not. This is a name that I'm long in the TTG Trend Portfolio, but I didn't like the break of the 50-day moving average, but it is what it is. This name came back with a vengeance. So if you're still long this name, as I am in the TTG Trend Portfolio, which I will probably be holding through earnings, but 268 is a level to watch for a breakout. It could not do it in the beginning of the month, and I was in this trade in here, I believe, and it failed to do it the last time it got here. So definitely a level to watch is 268 there. Other names that went to with the Palo Alto move, ginormous move in Palo Alto. This will go on our watch list. On our earnings watch list names. ZS had a nice move today too. Datadog too. Kind of teased me a little bit. I thought this name was going to. This is a name I've been sitting long for the last couple weeks. Very close, very close to taking the next leg higher. I'm still long this name. All right, what else did I want to go over? Just a couple other ones. Upstart. This is a name that we added to the TTG Trend Portfolio last week. New highs. So very impressive. Spent a little while consolidating. Again, another earnings name. Big move up. Consolidated for about a week after that big move and took the next leg. It's trying to activate the next leg higher. out to new highs. All right, guys, that is it. Again, anything else that I didn't mention here? Generac, I got, I don't want to see hurricanes, but if there are, that trade for Generac does pretty well in this situation. That'll be the last chart that we go over. Notice how this thing got into value. So we'll see what it does. 412 is support. You could also use the 50-day moving average as support. If it breaks back down below that, then I won't like Generac as much. But for now, it's the first day back above the 50-day moving average and this downtrend line I've got. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.